maybe it's not going to work. Whatever. Welcome, everybody, to a special Friday the 13th edition of The Strategic Veteran here with Chris Inman. This would be the first episode of what we're calling Transition Talks. I'd like to start doing these weekly with some of you who want to come on here and just have a platform to talk about the things that ail you in the transition. I met Chris through the Allegiant Vets SkillBridge program that I got the chance to present at. He was one of the few that reached out to me interested in entrepreneurship and just kind of navigating the transition. And I've been blessed to be able to work with him for, I don't know, what is it, like 4 months now?
Yeah, about four or 5 months. Yeah,
about 4 months helping him through his transition. And he reached out to me a couple of times. We just hadn't been able to make this work. He really wanted to come on and share his experience in the transition and provide a bunch of value to you guys. So with that being said, let's welcome Chris Inman, and the floor is yours, buddy.
Well, thanks, Adam. I appreciate it. Happy Friday the 13th to everybody. As you know, my name's Chris, and I'm an Air Force veteran. I was in the Air Force for 12 years, and I just recently went through my transition this last year. I officially separated the middle of May this past year. So officially, I've been separated for about 4 months now. I'm going on 5 months, but during that time, I had the pleasure of doing SkillBridge with Allegiant Vets. I started that at the end of last year in December. Which ran through April of this year. And I was in the digital marketing track there at Allegiant Vets. Got to make a lot of great connections, meet a lot of great people, got a lot of great education and things there. So it's a really great program that I'd recommend to anyone in their transition first off. And now I currently, after my transition, I'm working in a operations and media manager role here with a local company in Oklahoma City. The company's Oklahoma Association of Realtors, and basically I work in marketing here. I do a lot of the operational background stuff when it comes to marketing and media here for the association. So,
how do you like that?
I've enjoyed it. I have really enjoyed it, and I know you've got to hear some about this, Adam. But man, it's been a great opportunity. I've been very blessed with this opportunity to be here. It's a great company. We're a small team of 10, and everybody's pretty close-knit. We work well together. My boss is actually an Army veteran himself, and so that's why he was really keen on hiring me and bringing me into that operational side of things and just like getting me engaged there. So I've really enjoyed it.
So that's the advantage you have with the career, because a lot of vets get out, and I hear it all the time. They're miserable in their career. They're not happy with where they're working. And you're working in a smaller team with someone who has been where you've been. I think that's kind of the key right there, right? Your boss has been where you've been. So he knows how to help you navigate these challenges. So let's explore that. Has he helped you in your transition thus far? And what things have come up while you're at work that you kind of have to go to him to help him help you deal with those?
Right. Absolutely. He has. So he knew immediately when hiring me, because I told him like, hey, I'm transitioning out. He knew that immediately that may be a challenge for me. And I was very open and honest with that up front, and so he's been very keen on, asking those questions as a leader of like, hey, how's your transition going? How are you feeling? How are you doing mentally? How are you doing physically? And just being there and opening that door to have that open discussion, and also saying like, hey, brother, like if you're having a rough day or you're feeling down, you're feeling bad, like come talk to me, like whatever we can do here as a company to like help you and be engaged with you so you can be the best version of yourself and bring your A game to work every single day. Like we're open to do that.
I love it, man. That's sounds like a really good guy just in general, right? Like instead of, just kind of, I don't know, I hear it all the time, right? Like I experienced it, they want you to take PTO to go to a VA appointment. Like, come on, seriously? Like, really? I have to take 8 hours of PTO just because I don't control when they make these appointments?
Right. That's a great point too. He loves the VA. Actually, he credits the VA for actually saving his life in an incident that he was in. And he doesn't make me take PTO for anything like that, nor anybody else for personal appointments. That's kind of like a company standard. Like, hey, use your PTO to actually be off, to enjoy your time off, and spend that time with yourself and your family doing things that you enjoy to recharge. So they're very keen on like, hey, that's your time off, your appointments and things like that. Just fit them into your schedule. As long as you're coming to work and you're doing your job and you're doing it well and getting things done and accomplished, they very much allow you that sense of freedom, which is totally different than what you experience in the military. So that's been an adjustment in itself.
Yeah. Talk about that.
So, leaving that structured environment, leaving that military environment where everything's set in stone, like, hey, be here at this time, we're doing X, Y, and Z, and everything is so structured. And there's a chain of command, and you have everything just set out in front of you. That path is laid. Leaving that structured environment can be hard. And I know it was kind of hard for me at first because I was kind of like, what do I do with myself when I started this job? I came into work that first week, and I remember just having a sense of freedom and like, yeah, you can go to lunch, whenever you want to, or like, hey, make sure you get this done by this date. But whatever you do in between them, like then and, your execution date is pretty much up to you. And so I was kind of like, okay, that first week I remember sitting in my office and I'm just like, I feel like I'm doing something wrong. Like I feel like I should be doing something else, or somebody should be telling me like, hey, Chris, go do this or go do that. And it almost like gave me a sense of anxiety. Like, okay,
Yeah.
when's the other shoe going to drop? When is something bad going to happen? When am I going to like get in trouble or do something wrong or screw something up? But in all reality, you're releasing that kind of grip that the military has on you with that structured environment. And you're learning how to grow into yourself. And when I say grow into yourself, I mean learning how to like manage those things on your own and control those things on your own, where somebody else before had control over all of those things in your life. Now you have to kind of grow and adjust and learn how to like, okay, how am I going to manage my time? How am I going to manage my schedule? When do I want to take time off? Like, when am I scheduling my appointments? When do I want to go on lunch every single day? I remember that first week, like I was like 5 minutes from the mall in our old building. And like, I was like, I'm just going to drive over to the mall and grab a couple of things, for the office and for the house. And like, I had freedom to do that, and I ate lunch and came back, and it was like nobody even knew I was gone. And so
did you find when you did that though, you were kind of in a rush, like, shit, I got to get back. I got to hurry back. Like you just felt that like hurried because dude, I relate to this feeling so much. I even still feel like this, and I work for myself. The only person to hold me accountable is me. But when I do take too much time away, I'm like, what are you doing? Like, come on, that anxiety creeps in. It's like, I should be doing something. And it's really largely, I still accomplish everything I need to accomplish for the day. You know what I mean? And it's just like, really, I'm holding myself accountable to myself for no reason. Like I'm feeling that way for no reason. And I love that you're speaking about that, because that was one of the very first things that I dealt with when I got out too. Like, I'm supposed to be doing something at every minute of every day, because that's very much the mentality that, from 6:30 PT to 09 formation to lunch formation to, COB formation. It's always something, always some kind of hard time, always somewhere you have to be. If you don't look busy, then the powers that be are going to make you busy, and you don't have that. That's pretty cool.
Yeah. Yeah. It's very cool. I remember, there are some days here where all my work's done. My work might be done early, and I'm like, okay, like I'm going to spend a little extra time out on lunch today, or I'm going to go run an errand that I need to do that I don't always have time to do during the week. Just having that freedom, and once you transition, I think you start to realize what kind of adjustment that actually is, because it's not just like, it's overcoming that sense of, I don't know, I want to say anxiety, or just almost like a fearful grip that you have on you to just constantly be one way all the time, to constantly be structured all the time, to constantly feel like you have to go above and beyond all the time, even when you don't feel like it. And so releasing that and like letting your nervous system kind of regulate itself and like come back to like a normal state of like, okay, you're just like looking around like, is this how normal people feel? Almost like you ask yourself that question, right? Is this like what people who never joined the military feel like? Is this like what they experience? And you kind of get that sense of like calm and leisure, trying to transition out of that constant go, go, go mindset, or that constant reality of having to perform a certain way all the time.
Yeah, for sure. I'm curious. So with your new place of employment, you said it's a smaller team. How many of them, other than your boss, are military?
So none. It's
Okay,
just
so it's
me
just
and
you and
him.
your boss. So that brings up an interesting question, because oftentimes I think a lot of people from the military getting out think that, it's going to be extremely challenging to fit into a workplace and really kind of build that team, slash brotherhood, sisterhood environment that we all come from. Let's talk about that aspect of it for you, because I know, because you've told me, right? Like, we've talked back and forth, but I think it's important to put it out there for everybody else that you can absolutely find a semblance of that again in your current workplace. So if you wouldn't mind, talk about that a little bit.
Yeah, absolutely. So I was a little worried about that at first. I had heard a lot of vets talk about it. Um, and I was like a bit concerned. I was like, okay, how do I need to fully conduct myself outside of a military environment and like a normal working corporate environment in America? Like, what does that look like? And at first, I was a little worried. I was kind of on pins and needles about, okay, like I got to watch what I say. I can't be out here dropping F bombs left and right, like raising my voice at people and like, just like being so just like, sporadic or just like militarized at the workplace. So I was worried, like, okay, how am I going to make that adjustment? Am I going to fit in with my coworkers and things like that? And the best thing I can say is just, you know, be open-minded and bring humility to the table, because I've met a lot of great people here that come from all different walks of life, different ages, different backgrounds, or do different things inside of the company. And, just having that ability to be humble and connect with people is like going to be your biggest asset when you come out into the civilian workforce. Just because we were in the military, yeah, we have a lot of experiences and, things were a lot different, but these people bring so many amazing things to the table that you can learn from and that you can just absorb, and really they bring so much information, and they kind of helped me and roped me in on my transition and just kind of, you know, fitting in with them, like welcoming me in and like, talking to me and just like, hey, how was your time in the military? How was this? How was that? I can tell you that you can still make those relationships and have those brothers and sisters outside of the military. And if you get into a good place, you get into a good company. I'm not going to speak for all companies, but example, today, we have some team time at 4 o'clock Central here. We're shutting all the computers down. We're going into my boss's office and we're taking an hour of just basically team time.
Are you
We're going to,
doing this from your office right now?
yeah, I am. I'm
That's
here. I am
badass, dude.
doing
That's
this.
so awesome.
I'm in my conference room right now. So, we're going to go up to his office. We're going to crack open a couple drinks and we're going to cap the Friday and the week. And then we're going to go into our weekend and leave here at 5 o'clock. So we did the same thing last week. He decides he wants to break open a $300 bottle of scotch. And we all had a little drink and hung out for about an hour and a half on a Friday. And because we had a very busy week, but we handled business. We
Work
did what we
hard,
were
play
supposed
hard,
to
right?
do. Work hard, play hard. And that was the end of it. So,
Dude, and I love what you talked about. You talked about having that open-minded attitude and realizing that, yeah, you have different backgrounds, but and I think this is super important for transitioning a lot more smoothly is, that open-mindedness, but understanding that everybody can teach you something. It doesn't matter whether you vibe with them or not, whether you feel like they're the smartest person or they have anything to offer. If you listen intently, everyone will teach you something. So I'm glad that you kind of pointed that out, because that's really the key. If you observe and you pay attention and you listen, you'll quickly figure out how to integrate yourself into that new team, what your role inside of that team is, how you're going to fit into that group or whatever. So I'm really glad that you touched on that, man.
yeah. Yeah, absolutely. I think that's one of the biggest things you can do in that transition is just to remember that. Because a lot of us, too, are not always going to start back in those leadership or supervisor positions either. A lot of us are going to start in different positions at different levels on the ladder. And
Right.
so just like your military experience at that point, yeah, it's still going to bring something to the table. It's valuable. You're going to be an asset to your team and to your company. but you got to remember too, at the same time, like, just know your role, know where you're coming in at the company, and then bring that value to them and work your way up from there. Because
How did you deal with that? Like, because I know you probably had feelings about that feeling. I hear it a lot, right? We tend to be a little entitled. I'm guilty of it myself. I left the aviation industry because I didn't want to pay the dues I had to pay to get to where I wanted to go as, a 33-year-old man, right? Like, so for me, I was pretty jaded, like kind of entitled a little bit, maybe a little bit. Like, I get it. You need so many hours to do, so many things because Congress said so, which I think is, that's a whole nother rabbit hole we could go down. But I often hear it like, I'm not interested in this job because it means I have to start from the bottom and work my way up, and I'm better than that. Well, really you're not, because you come from an organization that does things way differently than most organizations out there. So how did you deal with that?
That's a great question, Adam. I still experience that sometimes, not going to lie, going from, being an NCO to coming somewhere where, I'm still in a manager position, but, I'm definitely not at the top of the ladder by any means. So there are those times where, pride can get in the way, or ego can get in the way if you let it, and you're like, no, I think we should do things this way, or no, you want to do things that way, or you think the best way to do something. And the way I really kind of dealt with that was like what I said earlier, just coming back to that humility and that humbleness, just relying on that, and just, I'm giving myself that this time, like at the company, to just soak things in, to learn, to take that all in. I don't need to come in here and start knife handing everybody and saying like, hey, we should do everything this way. You know what I'm saying? Like, or, like, I don't need to bring that to the table. It's finding out how, with your skill set and what you bring to the table, like, know it well, know your strengths, know your weaknesses, and know how you can strengthen the company in your role and bring that to the table. That's how you're going to shine. That's how you're going to stand out. That's how you're going to move yourself up the ladder.
Well, and I feel like there's got to be some kind of element too, now that you're in it and you've been there for a couple of months now, there's a reason for that. You probably wouldn't have been a very effective leader because you know absolutely nothing about the inner workings of the company, right? You've never done it before. So did that help kind of ease your thoughts and feelings about having to start over there? Or, talk about that for a minute.
Right. So you mean like going into like a manager position?
Well, yeah, I mean, just like we carry that entitled feeling to us, like, oh, I could just get in there and I could be, a key leader inside of this company. And I think really what I'm trying to get you to say is, like, I'm sure you probably got in there and you're like, oh shit, like, no, there's no way I could be an effective leader in this company because there's so many systems and processes that you just don't know yet.
That is so true. There are so many things that I still don't know about. I'm still learning new things every single day. Like, there are so many different things to learn. And I've thought about this a few times. I just think about, like, I spent 12 years doing the same thing, doing the same job. And like, I was very effective at what I was doing, and I felt great about what I was doing. I knew all the insides and outs of it after 12 years, or at least most of them. And so starting completely over, it was a very overwhelming and stressful experience for sure. Just like taking that on, especially at first, I feel like I was just getting fire hosed with information. And so it can be very stressful learning all of those things over again. And I think just kind of like go back to the beginning of your military career where, in my case, where I was just like a baby airman at, 19 years old, like trying to learn all the ins and outs of my job and getting to my first base, and everything's just overwhelming. And there's so much information floating around. And so, like, me and one of my bosses, we were talking earlier today, and like, we're going to start working on something new here this next week. And it's just something I've never done before. It's still something new inside of the company that I have no idea that he's going to be teaching me. And so there is a lot of that, and it is an adjustment period, but give yourself that time, give yourself that grace to adjust and learn those things so you can become an expert at your craft.
Yeah, for sure. Are you having fun?
I am having fun. Now, there's some downsides to the transition that have not been fun, but here I'm having a lot of fun, and I do really enjoy my job here.
Well, let's talk about some of those downsides. That's what we're here to talk about, is the transition. This is Transition Talks. So See, again, the floor is yours, man. What else you want to talk about?
Okay, sure. Yeah, we can dive into that. I think this is very important. And this goes kind of back to that mental health aspect of a lot of things. When I first started SkillBridge and things last year, it was a remote SkillBridge, and I really was excited and happy. And it was great for about the first month to a month and a half. And I was ecstatic. I was getting to work from home, and I had some pretty good leeway there too. I was kind of like, making my own schedule for the most part and doing a lot of great things with Allegiant and working with their marketing team there. But I had a lot of freedom also. And I didn't really know how to manage that freedom or what to do with it. So I struggled at first setting a good pace and a good structure for myself. And I didn't realize too, like after doing the job that I did for 12 years, like how that would kind of affect my nervous system during the transition and how that would really show up. After a couple of months, I started getting kind of depressed. I started getting very anxious. I was inside my house all the time because I was working from home, and I'd never worked from home a day in my life. It was all new to me, where I was going to work every day, being a part of a team, doing the same thing every single day. The structure was there. I was working the same schedule every day with the same people. And then when you just all of a sudden stop doing that, when you all of a sudden leave the military environment, you leave the military structure, you leave, the work center where you go to work, and you kind of just, in my case, was very much like, okay, I had to keep a very open mind on what to expect each day. I definitely didn't realize that I was on a very high level of alertness and anxiety at most days at work because I became so numb to it. I became so used to it. And so those things show up. They will show up, especially when your body starts to learn like, hey, I'm not doing the same thing every day. Your mind starts to catch up. Your body starts to catch up. And then for me, in my case, it led to me having extreme anxiety, like really bad panic attacks. I'm talking about like heart racing 150, 160 beats per minute. I'm like shaking. I'm throwing up, like just extremely bad panic attacks that started to hit me during the middle of that transition around like February, March.
How'd you get over it?
Oh, well, it still has been a process, but it does get better. It does get better. The big thing for me was just, kind of course, therapy, a lot of therapy, CBT, just going through that therapy and that process and learning how to manage and cope with those panic attacks and that anxiety. But the big thing for me that helped in therapy was just learning and understanding that when you transition, you're essentially shedding an old identity. So that was the big thing for me, is like understanding and accepting that I was shedding an old identity of somebody that I was for 12 years and moving into being someone new. I was no longer, Airman Inman or Sergeant Inman or any of those things. I was Mr. Inman at that point. And my therapist was like, he asked me one day, he said, "Who is Mr. Inman?" And I just remember looking at him and I'm like,
You don't know.
I have no
You had no idea, right?
I have no idea.
That's the big problem. And I'm willing to bet part of that too. One of the first things that went for me was PT. Done. Like not doing PT. And I think whether we like to admit that to ourselves or not, that is a huge part of dealing with, the transition. A lot of us cut it out. We gain a bunch of weight. Your body doesn't like that at all. And so did you or your therapist recommend getting more physically active back into it?
Oh yeah. He's like, you got to stay on a regimen. He's like, if you're not lifting or in the gym, whatever, that's great. He's like, you at least need to be like walking every day, like set a step goal for yourself, like get outside, get sun, walk every single day, do something that's active. That's going to keep you active and keep you in a decent shape and decent health.
And you weren't doing that, correct? You had quit that as soon as you
I wasn't doing it. No, I quit. As soon as I started SkillBridge, I was very much like, I remember going back through my health data and like looking at my step counts because I worked a job where I was on my feet, where I was doing like 10, 15, 16,000 steps a day. Yeah. And looking at my step count between like December and like March or April.
It was abysmal, wasn't it?
I was doing like 5,000 to 6,000 steps a day which was like
a third of what
literally
you
like
were doing.
5 miles less than what I normally was doing, because I was just sitting in my house behind a computer all day, either doing SkillBridge work or frantically panicking about finding a job for getting out.
Well, and that's another good point, right? So I hear this a lot. I've talked to here recently several more veterans who are struggling to find jobs. So I know that was a big issue for you, and I felt like I gave you pretty good advice, but talk to us about that job hunt and what that was like for you, and what would you have done differently?
It's another great question. So for me, I was very lackadaisical about it at first. I was like, oh, I have 6 months, until I get out. I got plenty of time to find a job. So I was just, moseying around, kind of doing my resume, kind of just like, okay, I'll get it updated when I get it updated. I was just kind of just very lackadaisical about the process. I'm like, it can't be that hard to find a job. It'll be easy. There's plenty of places hiring and desperately need workers, right? Like, I was very much in the wrong mindset. I want to say I misunderstood, but maybe I just very much didn't give transition the credit that it deserved. And by that, I mean, like, I underestimated my enemy, essentially. I struggled. The job search became very, very, very stressful. And that's also contributed to my anxiety, depression, panic attacks. Because I was inside every day, stressing behind my computer for hours, redoing my resume, right? Applying for jobs, like reaching out to recruiters, like doing all of these things, trying to just figure out like all the right pieces, because it is figuring out the right pieces. I had never done a civilian resume before. I'd never talked to a civilian recruiter before. I'd never done anything in the civilian world ever. Everything had been all military since I was 19 and left home. And so you don't understand that also itself is a big learning curve that you have to learn and that you have to take steps into. So I would recommend, if you're listening to this and you're still in the military, you need to start a year out, a year and a half out, even 2 years out.
I
Start
don't know
learning.
if you just saw that last comment from Brandon Jenkins, but he's about to retire, and he just credited you for giving him a ton of value, because I know this is something that's weighing heavy on him. So, dude, spot on. And I want to dive a little deeper into the job hunt, because I think a lot of people are really confused. Applying to jobs is miserable in that it's not an immediate response anymore, right? Like I know, and this has been over a decade ago, so I know it's changed, but when I would apply to jobs, it would be months later before I would get an answer back. And I would have, back then, when I would get kind of that response months later, I had already moved on and was working another job. So talk about your experience with that, and how many of them really were probably several weeks before you would hear from them, which contributes to that anxiety and that stress. I talked to a guy a couple of weeks ago. He had applied to 147 jobs and heard nothing back.
Yes. So that is very common. I remember applying for jobs in January and already working here in my new position in like April and getting rejection emails 4 months later. And I was like, wow. I was like, well, great. I have a new job, but thanks for letting me know now 4 months later that, I'm rejected for this job. But yeah, a lot of them are like that. It takes weeks. It could take a month, 2 months before you hear something back. They're just getting oversaturated with applications, or they'll pull a job off the market because they don't want to hire for it anymore, or just there's so many different factors that play a role into that. And another thing is, what really helped me, and I don't want to discredit anybody this is what I did. I used LinkedIn for building connections and talking to recruiters and networking. That's what I use LinkedIn for, to get my name out there, to get people to see my work, to look at my portfolio, like things like that, to find people that would, look at my resume and gave me advice. And I found some great, great people on LinkedIn, people I still talk to that I'd never even met before in my life, that gave me free advice, that got on calls with me, that like talked me through things, like great people. So please use that as your networking tool. But like the biggest thing for me finding jobs was not LinkedIn. And I know that's not for everybody. Like my thing was Indeed. I got quick responses. I got quick interviews. job offers off Indeed faster than anything else.
That's interesting to me because I've
Yeah.
heard it both ways. I've heard Indeed is just a complete pile of shit these days, and the recommendation is going to remotejobs.io and FlexJobs, which I know you have to pay for, but they eliminate the spam crap that I think Indeed's got going on. But then, hearing you say Indeed, I had a lot of luck on Indeed back when I was looking for jobs too. I know my wife, when she looks to change jobs every 6 months because she just hates people, she has quite a bit of luck on Indeed as well. So using those resources, and I love how you talked about the LinkedIn piece and using it for networking, because I think we can both agree building that network is essential.
Yes.
How essential, did you realize how essential it was to have a network when you were getting out? Had you already started building your network or no?
So 2 things here. I just want to address the LinkedIn thing real quick with something from my own personal experience there. I applied for this job that I'm in now twice, actually, without realizing it. I applied once on LinkedIn and I applied once on Indeed. And I got an immediate response on Indeed and never got a response on LinkedIn.
Okay.
So that was kind of like a big whoa moment for me. I never told them that I applied on LinkedIn too, but I got the call back from Indeed. So it was very interesting to me. I was like, okay. But that's just a total side story.
Well, no, I mean, I think that actually helps, right? That's real-time data from somebody who just went through it. So everyone listening, I mean, that's powerful to know, right? Like if you see the same job on different platforms, it might behoove you to apply to it everywhere.
And
Can't hurt,
absolutely,
right?
absolutely. And if the company has a website, go straight to the company website and apply also, is another thing that helps.
There you go.
And with the networking piece, I think it's essential. Start early. If I could have started, like I said, a year and a half out, maybe even 2 years out, I would have started. I would already had my LinkedIn profile set up. I would have already been networking with people on there. Like, hey, I'm getting out of the military. Like, even if it's 2 years from now, like, hey, I'm getting out of the military in a couple of years. I'm just like, talking to people, networking, learning about different jobs, things I might be interested in. Learn from people on there. Look at the job markets, see what people are saying. Again, be a sponge, absorb that information, build your network. Especially, if you're looking into a field that you really want to get into, utilize LinkedIn, contact people that are in that field. Some people may never respond to you, but there are going to be people out there that want to help you and say like, hey, let's jump on a call. Let's talk about how, you might have a leg up, or how, your education might benefit you, or hey, you need this cert, or hey, you should do this to your resume. Like they'll give you that advice. They'll help you. So utilize that tool now. Don't wait until you're 6 months from transition like I was, and you're scurrying around just like trying to put all the pieces together.
Yeah. So I want to move to something I don't think is talked about a lot in the transition. And knowing that you have a family, I want to know, how did your home life change because you had gotten out, and how did that affect you personally and kind of everything you were going through? I'm fairly certain that this is a really important kind of piece that's not touched on a lot.
Right. Yeah, this is good. So, just to give a little bit of a backstory, a lot of people ask me like, why did you get out at 12 years? You were so close to retirement. Well, I had my own personal reasons for that. And a lot of that was my family wanting to, be with my kids, wanting to spend that time with them, not wanting to go on deployments and things like that anymore. Like things had just changed and shifted inside of me, and who I was at this point in my life. And at this point in my life, I value my kids and my relationships with them and my family more than I did, being in and doing the job anymore. And so at that point, I am not an asset to the service anymore. It's time for me to move on and find something else, right? So somebody else can take my place that, is going to be willing and open to do those things. So I made that choice, and I was to get out and to separate. With the family, though, just like, that dynamic, for one, that puts a lot of stress and pressure on you too, wanting to provide for your kids, wanting to be able to take care of them. And that adds the stress, the anxiety, the panic, all of that, the worry. And so it was really hard. It was really hard on them and on me for those during my transition period, like during my SkillBridge period, because I was just extremely stressed out. I wasn't myself. I was kind of absent-minded, vacant, because I was constantly worrying. I was constantly working, constantly trying to figure so many things out. But like, I knew I wanted to do it. Like, again, I misunderstood my enemy. I didn't have a good game plan. I didn't study transition the way that I should have. And it's not something that's taught to you while you're in either, which definitely needs to change at a DoD level. Now it's a lot better. It's gotten a lot better.
When I like, yeah, and it's important to realize, because what changes is the routine changes, right? Dad gets up, he goes to PT, he's gone all day, he comes home. Now dad's sitting here all day in front of a computer. He's miserable because he doesn't know how to do this. He also doesn't know who he is, right? And that just throws the entire house off, which adds to the stress that you have, right? It adds to the anxiety that you have because you feel like you're falling short in your duties of taking care of your family or even yourself, right? So it's so important to really, and I'm glad you touched on that. And you said something in there too about why did you decide to get out at 12 years and you're so close to retirement. I'm sorry, but 8 years is not close to retirement. It's a long time to stay in the military because we all made it through the first 8 years. It's rough, but I think moreover, and even we had a comment from, Sunny in here, her husband decided to get out at 12 years as well. I really think that's your sign that, you're starting to get the signs or whatever of rediscovering who you are. You're realizing that your identity isn't completely wrapped up in service to your country and being the best, whatever your job was in the Air Force that you can be, right? You're starting to realize that there's more for you out there, and internally, whether you subconsciously realize that or consciously realize that, you're starting to change as a person. And I'm really glad that you brought that up, because I don't think that people pay attention to that enough, right? I'm willing to bet that the feeling for you getting out was a really deep-seated gut feeling, like kind of trust your gut on this one. Like, I want out. This isn't for me anymore. Am I right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Because I'm here to tell you, and I'm sure you can talk about this at length, and I will let you do that. When you get out, we tend to really just identify with what we've done in our careers, that one job for that one organization for the same mission that the entire Air Force or Army or whatever you served in is doing. And you lose all of that, but you still try to hang on to that. Like that's particularly for me when I joined at 17, didn't get out till 30, right? My whole adult life is spent being the best infantryman I can be. And that becomes your identity because I don't know any better. How did you sit with yourself to figure out who you actually are? Did part of you already start to figure that out when you decided it's time to get out at 12 years? Because I was a career guy, so it took me a lot longer to figure out who I was than it probably should have. Particularly being med boarded, that was like the worst thing that could have happened to me because I was on the track to retirement.
Yeah. No, that's great, Adam. That's great. So it's going to take a lot of sitting with yourself and understanding that and figuring that out. I had that deep-seated feeling like you described, like I knew I was ready to be done. When I was getting up every day and not wanting to get up and go to work, I was like, it's time to take the boots off and move on to something else. And so I didn't realize how much, like I said, of my identity was wrapped up in the military. So I was kind of blindsided by that aspect of it. Looking back at it now, I'm like, how? But, you never see it until after the fact.
Grass is always greener, right?
Right, exactly. And so for me, I had to take conscious steps to start figuring out who I was and what I valued outside of the military, which obviously I know part of that was family, right? So understand that your worth and your value are not just based on your military service.
Let's talk about some of those steps you had to take, because I think that's where the real value is for anybody who's listening to this right now that's transitioning. This is how you figure out who you are without the military. And you're going to hear it from somebody who is actively going through it right now, not somebody like me who did it a decade ago. Like Chris is very much, I think I would think it's safe to say you're on the backside of it at this point. Transition is kind of forever, but you're not in the thick of it as much as you were, 4 months ago.
Right. Right. Yeah. It's definitely a lengthy process. I'm still going through it now. I mean, you're not wrong there. But the steps, right? The process for me, um, was like I was just saying, understanding that my worth and my value wasn't based on my military service. I had to really understand that and understand that I could still bring value to other areas in life and other work centers and at home, and understanding that, you know, that was who I was for a certain period of time, and to hold on to those memories, to cherish those things, to honor that. Um, but to also understand that my worth wasn't based on that, because I based my self-worth on that,
Mhm.
right? What got to do every single day at work. That was my self-worth. And so I never really put a lot of thought and time into that. And then I was like, okay, when my therapist asked me that question that one day, he's like, who is Mr. Inman? He's like, it's time that we start figuring out who you are. And so I started taking action steps from there. And that was me having to spend a lot of time with just myself, sitting down, having those hard conversations with myself, writing things out. Like, what do I value? Who do I want to be? Like, making plans for my future. Like, what do I want the rest of my future to look like? You know, what kind of man do I want to be now that I'm not in the military? Like, really thinking those things through with deep and intentional thought every single day, and making time to do that. Because if you don't make time to do it, you're not going to do it.
At
You'll
all.
end up drinking, you'll end up partying, you'll end up finding other ways to cope, or just numb out, and you won't actually face that demon and really look it in the face and try to figure out and put all the pieces together. You'll
Dude,
very much just push it off.
and you hit it right. You were basing your self-worth on your military service.
Yeah.
So that begs the question, what is your self-worth based on now, in this moment right now today? And I know this is going to change, and it should change, right? Because we draw our self-worth from things that fill our cup up, right? But we oftentimes don't realize what that is in the military, because the military just forces you to fill your cup, right? Like, so right now in this moment, what do you base your self-worth on?
That's good. So for me personally, it's, first and foremost, not everybody's religious, but who I am in God, and what I can do there, and how I spread that and bring that to the table every single day, and living out God's plan for my life. Number one. Number two, it's being a father. It's, do I do the best that I can every single day for my kids? What do I bring to the table there? And teaching them, instructing them, spending quality time with them, being intentional with them, as
Being
their dad,
present, right?
being present. Yeah, 100% being present with them. And then of course, I'm in a relationship, and, I'm looking to get married soon. So it's like, okay, me being a good man there, being a good leader inside of the household for all of them, and being a good leader in my relationship, and being a good man to her. And like, really engulfing all of those things together is kind of my center. It's kind of my balance, and who I am as a person now. And then of course, after that, now that I have like those three established, it's of course my career. It's coming here every day, doing the best that I can for my team, that, my new team that I love and that I appreciate. And, that supported me through all of this crap, because they have, they know, my boss knows, he knows about the panic attacks. He knows about the anxiety. He knows about the transition. And, you know, so I come to work every single day and give the best I can here, and just grow and develop and contribute to the company the best that I can. And those are the four things for me that I focus on. And then of course, outside of that, you have your other little things, right? The little things that kind of make you who you are, your hobbies, your friend groups, your things like that. And so that's how I've kind of looked at it and formatted it for myself.
Man, I love it, dude. I'm so proud of you, by the way, because I've gotten to see, from before you were actually out to where you're at now, and have those conversations with you, man. And I'm so proud of you for staying out of your own way and actually doing the work, because it's not easy work. It sucks. I know it sucks. It still sucks to this day. It's uncomfortable. It's not fun. It's tough. A lot of times you have to deal with shit you don't want to deal with, but man, are you better for it. And I'm so happy for you, man, because I know from that first couple of conversations that we had, where you were, and to hear you talk about your career now, right? This is a career. It's not just a job. Before you were talking about getting a job, and words matter, right? You wanted a job and you ended up with a career. You landed in a spot where you can be vulnerable with somebody who understands what's going on. And I know that may be a little bit more rare in the corporate world, having a boss that was in the Army and understands the transition. But I think there's a lot to be said about you just being vulnerable with them and telling them, like, look, I'm transitioning. I've got these anxiety attacks. I've got all this kind of going on, like, I want you to be aware of it. And it takes a special kind of person to be able to stand up and say that,
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. I appreciate you saying that, Adam. And I appreciate you. And of course, the way you supported me, just not only being a friend, but just in transition wise, just being there for me and giving me sound advice and things like that. It's been awesome experience. And because of people like you that have supported me and helped me, I mean, it's made my transition, it made it easier in those extremely hard times. It's made it, it's made it a lot easier. And so that's another thing I would say to everyone is just find your community, like the Stronghold and things like that. Be in those veteran communities, find your circle of people that are going to support you while you're going through the transition and even after the fact, because transition doesn't stop as soon as you turn in your CAC and drive off base for the last time. Like, you're still going to continue to mourn those things and process those things. And I still do it almost every single day now. I'll see a photo or I'll see a picture, or I'll drive by the base or whatever. And it's just like, you go back there in your head. So,
oh yeah. Every day, man, sitting down, talking to people who are still serving, still in, guys that you mentored while you were in, when you have conversations with them and they're, man, I wish I was still doing that. Well, that's not real. And I'm not ever going to do that again. But, it's okay to look back and kind of reflect on those things. Just don't hang on to them. You just don't hang on to them. What else did you want to talk about the transition? What else, what other, pain point did you really get stuck on or came up for you, through even to now? Like what else did you want to talk about?
Great question. There's just so much here.
There's a bunch.
Talk about this all day, Adam.
We really could. Yeah.
We can talk about this all day with everyone. Like I said, the big thing I really hope people take away from all of this is, start early. I just kind of want to recap some things and talk through that. Just start early. Get yourself mentally prepared, especially. Don't underestimate transition. You won't realize how hard it is until you go through it. So don't underestimate it. Start early. Have yourself a community. Start thinking about those things in advance, thinking about who you are, what you want to be, what do you want to do with your life, and start mentally preparing more than anything, and have a plan and a structure for yourself in place and stick to that. Because that's what's that consistency is what's going to keep you going on your hard days when things really suck or things are really grim. And of course, everybody's transition experience is different. Mine's going to be way different than so many other people. There's a lot of veterans out there who still don't have jobs or are still looking or still trying to figure things out. What I've done and what everybody can do, especially if you've already transitioned, is, help your brother or sister next to you. Just like we did in service, help them with their resumes, give them advice that's helped you, be there for them when they need it. I've tried to do that as much as possible. I've helped people with resumes. I've talked with people through job searching and through interview prep and things like that. Like, just give back and do the best that you can to the community, because there's a lot of us out there that are struggling or having a hard time that need that.
Man, so powerful. And if you need help with a resume, there's a creator on LinkedIn. His name is Brad Tachi. He's over in Japan, but he created Best Military Resume. He's doing some awesome things with that. So if you're listening to this and you're struggling to get a job, reach out to Brad. He's an amazing guy, and he'll help you with your resume with his tool. So you can do that. Man, Chris, dude, thanks for being here. Thanks for doing this with me. I know you said you've never done anything like this before.
Not live.
I mean, it's no different. Still talking to a camera, man. Just people are watching you. Yeah. and you can see it real time. You think the strategic veteran should do this on a weekly basis?
Yeah, absolutely. I think you should. I think more people need to hear about it. I know, like when I was sharing some videos and things like that on my own social media, there's a big vet community out there, which that desires these things. There's an active duty members desire these things. They want this information because they're not getting it in service, especially. They're not getting it in taps and things like that. They want the real, like the nitty gritty. They want to know, like, okay, what is this actually about? What am I going to be facing? How can I face it, head on and overcome it and be prepared? So I think this is something that would be beneficial 100%.
Perfect. You heard the man. So I guess if you are interested, if you're a transitioning veteran and you want to come on and do this, we'll do this every Friday, as long as I can get a veteran to come on and share their transition thoughts with us. Why not the same time every Friday? We'll do that. And if we have to change times or whatever, we can make that work. So I don't know how this works after this is done. I should probably pay more attention, but comment on the post or whatever. If you want to do this, you can reach out to me, email me. All my contact information is on the LinkedIn homepage. You can find it all there. Chris, we've got like 5 minutes left. So the last 5 minutes is all you, man. Whatever you want to push, promote, say, talk about, it's all you, brother.
Well, first thing I would say is don't hesitate to reach out. I will be here for anybody who needs the help. So please reach out. I'd love to give back. That's part of the reason why I'm on this podcast now, is because I wanted to talk about this and spread this message in a wider sense. Also, don't be afraid to be vulnerable and share your own experiences with other people who need to hear it. I've seen a lot of more people doing that, and I'm proud of a lot of you for doing that and sharing your experiences, so other veterans and transitioning service members can see those stories and hear those stories. So don't be afraid to do those things. Don't be afraid in general to ask for help. A lot of people don't want to ask for help. They're worried about being judged or whatever the case may be. Look, it sucks. We're all out here, and when we transition into civilian life, we're all like, we feel, I don't want to say hopeless or helpless, but there's some of those feelings because, like I said, I spent months tailoring resumes and trying to figure things out and figuring out what was going to work and what the right formula was, throwing spaghetti at the wall every single day, trying to get something to stick until something finally did. But you will get your breakthrough. It will work out. You will find the job and you will find the right fit and you'll find the place that you're supposed to be. But also be humble and have humility in that process as well, because you don't know everything about resumes. You don't know everything about finding jobs in the civilian world. So be a sponge, be flexible, be open, because I know I've had people come to me for advice and then that worked for me and they've not been very receptive, even though they wanted advice and they wanted help and things like that. And I was like, well, look, man, like I'm doing my best to give you everything that worked for me. But if you're not going to at least try or absorb it, then, you're not going to listen to anybody. You're going to have to learn it the hard way. So don't learn it the hard way. Take people's advice for what it is. Apply the things that work for you.
That's such great advice, man, especially about, getting out of your own way and actually listening to these people. You're not an expert on any of this stuff. You're not an expert on resumes or systems and processes within the corporation. So if people are offering you advice, open your mind, hear it, take action on it, because that's the fastest way to get ahead.
Yep, absolutely. Absolutely. And then, of course, don't be afraid to reach out to, therapists, people like that either. If you're struggling with your mental health, I encourage it. I've been in therapy for a while. And I've got
this is a good point, Chris. I'm glad you're bringing this up because I hear this all the time, right? I was taught in the Army that it's weak to go ask for help, and I watch people's careers get ended. Now, I'm fairly certain a lot of us carry that mindset. And so kudos to you for stepping out of that comfort zone and actually realizing that you do need to ask for help. And I promise you, when you ask for help and you bear it all and you're vulnerable about it, life gets a million times better. And I'll take it as far as saying, I think asking for help, admitting that you don't have all the answers and that you need help is the strongest, most, I don't have the word for it, but it's like the best thing that you could absolutely do as a leader, as a person, for yourself. Asking for help, in my mind, is like the top of the mountain. You've made it if you get to the point where you finally let yourself ask for help.
Yeah, Absolutely. Absolutely. Ask for help, get the help that you need, not just from other people with, for different things like we mentioned over and over again, resumes and LinkedIn and Indeed and all the different systems that are out there and platforms, all that, but with your mental state as well, if you're having issues with that. I didn't realize how many of us were suffering a lot of the same things until I got into Allegiant Vets and we were all transitioning. And I was, Allegiant is a very big program. There's hundreds and hundreds, probably over thousands now, of people that are in these programs that you get to talk to. And just like a lot of them will tell you the same things. They're having the anxiety, they're having panic attacks or anxiety attacks. They're constantly worried or stressed out or fearful, and experiencing a lot of different things. So there's nothing wrong with asking for the help. There's nothing wrong with getting the help. We're taught to be strong and all of these things and, in the military, but the strongest thing you can do is face yourself. If you can't face yourself and look at yourself in the mirror every single day to overcome the things that are going on in here, then you're, I don't want to say this in a bad way, but how much success do you expect to have on the outside of that, and the outside of scope of things? Like it clouds every part of your life and your judgment and things.
Man, so powerful. Chris, thank you so much for being here and doing this. Like I said, we're going to start doing these every Friday so long as I can get a veteran to come on here and talk about their story. So if that's you and you want to come talk transition, then we'll do it. Also, we got workshops going on live while the Stronghold's closed right now. So Chris actually plugged it for me earlier, so I didn't have to, but we do have a community, the Stronghold, a lot of cool things happening in there, a lot of vulnerability going on in there and people getting actionable help. So pay attention to when that goes, those doors open again. We'd love to have you in there. And it's a really good place where you can do some solid work, get help with all of these things that Chris has talked about today. And that's it. That's my sales pitch for this today. I really appreciate those of you who tuned in to listen live. I'm sure more of you will catch it on the replay on YouTube. It'll go out to all platforms eventually as soon as I get it optimized. Again, Chris, man, thank you so much for being here and sharing your story. This is the kind of work that helps us, save lives and make the transition better for veterans. And really, this is all you have to do is reach out to me. I'll give you a platform to come tell your story. And you have no idea how much that helps. So, Chris, thank you for being the first one. You definitely are making a difference in creating value for people. Tell everybody how they can find you if they want to reach out to you, because I may not resonate with everybody. I know you're more than willing to help people. You've said it a million times here. So let's make sure your socials go out there and they can reach you.
Yeah, you can find me on LinkedIn. Just search my name, Christopher Inman. You'll see me pop up. Redheaded guy with a beard. I don't have my beard right now, so but you'll see me on LinkedIn. I'm on Facebook, Instagram, TikTok. If you're looking for me on Instagram or TikTok, you'll find me under Coaching with Chris. That's my handle there. Again, that's just Coaching with Chris. You'll type that in and I should pop right up for you guys. But if you want to hit me up on LinkedIn, that's great. Facebook, I don't care. Whatever platform, I'm more than happy to get back to you and help you.
Awesome. Ladies and gentlemen, I give you Chris Inman, and we will see you tentatively next Friday at 3:00 Eastern for another episode of Transition Talks. Take care, everybody. We'll see you next week.